Here to encourage, empower, and enlighten women, I am your host, Alyssa Khadija, and this is the Girl I Got You podcast, now streaming on Apple and Spotify. Hello, my beautiful ladies. Welcome back to another episode of the Girl I Got You podcast. And if you haven't already, please go check out the previous episode where I do a deep dive on sexual sobriety. Essentially, it's just my take on the casual sex culture that we have these days and how it impacts women's mental health. So if that's something that you're struggling with or experiencing, that's okay. There's no judgment at all. I would definitely recommend giving it a go or giving it a try and see if you can take any insight from that episode. And speaking of mental health, we've had a snowstorm here in the DMV, and unfortunately, my car has been trapped under a few inches of snow, so I haven't really been able to go anywhere. But I'm not completely upset about that because I love my house. But I have had a lot of free time on my hands to do a little bit of deep diving, a little bit of studying, scrolling through social media, streaming on other platforms. And today I ended up having a discussion with some panelists about mental health. And this was simply prompted by watching a few episodes of Ayanna Vanzant Fix My Life. And a reoccurring theme that showed up through these episodes was childhood trauma and the wounds that they cause. Now, I will say that because I have had my own childhood trauma experiences, this is something that is near and dear to my heart, and it's something that I talk about and tell people about all the time. So I figured, why not have the discussion right here on the podcast where we can begin to explore the journey of healing from our childhood traumas, because childhood trauma is something that impacts so many people, regardless of age, regardless of race, regardless of gender, regardless of background. We've all had childhoods, and we've all had experiences within those childhoods that were less than favorable and at times traumatic. So I want to open the door for us to begin exploring what childhood trauma is, how we can go about healing it. And I will preface this entire episode by saying there's no way to cover the depth and the intricacy of childhood trauma in just one episode. So what I'm going to do is break it down week by week and maybe discuss a particular topic or a particular dynamic that has to do with childhood trauma, because we can spend a lifetime exploring childhood trauma, and I'm just not going to be able to fit that into one episode. I want you to get clarity. I want you to get insight and real depth from each episode regarding childhood trauma and each episode in general. So I think these are going to start as series or a special, if you would, addressing childhood trauma. Nonetheless, today I'm going to give a brief overview, if you would, of what childhood trauma is. You know, what are the experiences that might cause childhood trauma, what it looks like in our adulthood, and then how we can begin to heal. So without further ado, let's get into it. So number one, what is childhood trauma? According to the Center of Child Trauma Assessment Services and Interventions, child trauma refers to a scary, dangerous, violent, or life-threatening event that happens to a child between the ages of 0 and 18. This can be anything, because children do not perceive reality the way that adults do. So what might be a situation that we can just forget about as adults, these things can leave lasting scars in children that stay with them well into their adulthood, if not for the rest of their lives. Now, what are some experiences that could cause childhood trauma? Sexual assault, number one, or sexual abuse. Physical abuse, witnessing or experiencing violence within the home and beyond, maybe a sudden separation from a loved one or a loved one passing, particularly a parent or someone that they were very close to. It can be bullying at home, bullying at school amongst peers, abandonment, neglect, poverty, and so much more that children should not have to go through. And it's so unfortunate because there are so many parents and families and adults in general that look at children as they would look at an adult. And children are so precious and they are so fragile that they do not deserve nor should ever be experiencing the levels of trauma that could destroy an adult, let alone a child. And I know I said that children are fragile, meaning, yes, their hearts are a lot more fragile than ours. However, as beings, children are very resilient. And as kids, their whole mission is to survive and to thrive. And unfortunately, that childhood trauma sends kids into that survival mode where they feel like they have to fight through their childhood. They have to fight through their teen years. And here they are as adults and they're still fighting. So essentially, childhood trauma is the experience of a traumatic event, which can be anything beyond what I just listed. And in adulthood, we could say, what does that look like? It never goes away until we heal it. And unfortunately, it does follow us into our adulthood like it did for me and so many other people. And it might show up in our relationships. It might show up as substance abuse or in dysfunctional family units. It might show up in dysfunctional relationships romantically or abusive romantic relationships as well. It can show up as poverty or financial instability as an adult, people pleasing, and codependency. It might show up in over sexualization and even sex addiction. And the crazy part is there's so many more ways that childhood trauma actually shows up as an adult. But what's even worse is that you can have all of these things in one. And many people just brush it off as, oh, well, this is just normal life. This is how it's just supposed to be. But until you get that outside perspective or that insight to say, this isn't normal. This isn't what life should be like. You never really get the opportunity to heal if you don't think that there is a problem. So for me, I can remember many of the traumatic situations that I experienced as a child. And one way that my childhood trauma was solidified or at least showed up in my childhood and adulthood, I had very low self-esteem. I didn't really have a sense of self. I didn't really value myself or see much worth in myself. And that was a result of emotional abuse, bullying, all these things that I experienced. I'm not limiting it to just that, but that's just the example that I'm using for now. Me, as a young adult in my early 20s, I realized that my life doesn't look the way that I want it to. And I had to ask myself and start doing the work or even just the deep diving to say, hey, why do I feel like this? And when I experienced or learned rather the reality of childhood trauma, because I didn't know any of this stuff. When I experienced my first come to Jesus moment, I was standing in the shower and I thought to myself, Alyssa, you are the center or common denominator of all your toxic relationships. Why do you think that is? And when we begin to take accountability for ourselves and to reflect on ourselves, we can't help but to address our childhood trauma because a lot of our beliefs, our actions, our thoughts, even our language is rooted in our childhood trauma. What a lot of people, I guess, don't understand is that your inner child never goes away. You are your inner child. This is why you do the things that you used to do as a kid. You still like some of the same shows. You still have the same talents and hobbies and things of that nature that you used to when you were a kid. But because of life circumstances, traumatic events, emotional situations, whatever, because of life, you put that away, but you are still your inner child. And so I tell people that when you're talking to your inner child, you're just talking to your current self. You feel and think and do the same thing that your inner child would do because nobody taught you how to grow up, especially coming from the Black community, whether you're African American or West African, African in general, or Caribbean. We have the tendency to sweep things under the rug, pretend that they're not happening, and not really get to the bottom of things as it relates to childhood trauma and the dysfunction that we have in our families. With that being said, it is definitely not just limited to the Black race. Anyone of any color, anywhere in the world can experience dysfunction, adult trauma, and childhood trauma. So the question now would be, how do we start to heal this? I say number one is actually acknowledging that you have trauma. Because if you never take the time to reflect and think, why is your life the way that it is? You're always going to be on autopilot. It's almost like you are just in the passenger seat and your inner child with all their trauma and emotional baggage are in the driver's seat riding along. What it is a child should not be in charge of an adult's life. A child cannot manage the complexities and the depth of an adult's life, nor should they have to. So why do you expect your inner child to take control and be in charge of your life? Then you wonder why there's so many adults out here who don't know how to be an adult. They're just adult children, kids stuck in adult bodies, right? So the first step would be to actually acknowledge that you have a problem, because how do you fix it if you don't even know that it's there? And how do you acknowledge it? By saying, okay, if I'm looking at my life right now, I don't like what's happening. I don't like the result that I'm getting. I'm going to reflect on why my actions are creating this result, and then see how you can change your actions. And how you change your actions is changing your beliefs. And how do you change your beliefs? I know it's so trivial. How do you change your beliefs? By going into your core, going into your inner self, into your memory bank, and rewriting some of the narratives that created those beliefs in the first place. So number one would be acknowledging that you do have a problem. Two, make the commitment to begin the journey of healing and actually dedicate yourself to the journey. I'm going to say this now. This is not an easy process, nor is it for the faint of heart. But honestly, this life is about survival of the fittest. And if you can't put in the hard work to heal, then you're just going to keep getting the same result, which is failed relationships, dysfunctional family units, emotional irregularity, and all kinds of things that you don't want in your life. Make the commitment. It's hard to heal, but it's also hard to stay in the same shitty situations that you've been in. So either way, it's going to be hard. You have to pick what hard you want and ask yourself, what are the results that are going to be the most rewarding to me? I didn't know it at the time, but once I got started, I could not stop. And of course, there were moments where I felt like I was doing a great job and, like I got so far. And then there were other moments where I felt like I would take 10 steps back or that I was failing at the entire process. But it is not a linear process. You don't just go straight forward. Sometimes you got to double back. Sometimes you got to go down. Sometimes you'll be up. It just depends. But I truly believe that when you are on your journey of healing and you feel like you are revisiting a cycle or revisiting somewhere you thought you already healed, it's because you have a little bit more work to do there. It's almost like a refining process of the healing journey. And that's what makes it so beautiful, because God is so invested in your life. He's making sure that no stone is left unturned. So make the commitment, because you're worth it. You are worth your energy and your time. I know so many of us grew up thinking that we didn't deserve love or time or effort or energy because it was never given to us. But now, as adults and as women, we can make the choice to say, okay, I am worthy of my own time, my own effort, my own investment, because you are. And the rewards, mwah, chef's kiss. So number 3 would be consider going to therapy. And again, depending on your culture, your background, I know therapy might be a taboo, but at the end of the day, your healing is so much more important than the gatekeeping and the rug sweeping that families and cultures do. You are the one that has to live with you. And what's so funny about it is no matter where you go, you can't run from yourself. For so long, I tried to run from myself. You would think that I was like an escape artist or something. I always wanted to escape and just go somewhere else. And when I couldn't go anywhere else, I would just drink or smoke to take my mind somewhere else rather than be in my own body. But the unfortunate thing about that is your problems don't go away. The pain and the wounds and the emotions do not go away. You might be able to distract yourself from them for a little while, but they will follow you no matter where you go, because you can't run away from you. So I decided when I was on the bathroom floor during Thanksgiving of 2020 at my cousin's house, while my family's just going on about Thanksgiving Day and I'm having like a mental breakdown in the bathroom, I decided I'm going to go to therapy. And I believe I was 23 at the time. So it took me 23 years to actually get to the place where I said, okay, you know what? I need to go to therapy. And it took me a while to find my current therapist, Dr. B, who I absolutely love so much. However, I had to go through a few different therapists and see what worked for me. Not every therapist is cut out for every person. There's so many different types of therapists, because therapists are just people, and people have different approaches to everything that they do. So I would implore you to see what works for you. Don't be afraid to do a trial run with a therapist. Say, okay, I'm going to give it 2 weeks. I'm going to give it a month. If I don't feel any resonance and connection with this therapist, instead of just giving up on therapy and throwing your hands up, just go find someone else and try it out. You'd be surprised that you find the right person for you. It's just like finding a favorite food or a restaurant that you like to eat at. I might not like Italian. I might not like Japanese, but hey, I like this Thai food. So you just try what works for you. And when it does work, you stick to that and you make modifications as necessary. But don't just shun therapy and say, I'm not going to do it because you're afraid of what other people might think or that they might judge you. No. Therapy is one of the best decisions I have ever made in my life, and I will continually say that. Therapists are professionals that are here to help you when you need someone to talk to, when you need an objective professional opinion. Likewise, they are there to help you in times of mental health crises. And with the good thing about therapists is that they can work with caseworkers, they work with hospitals, they work with other mental health and health professionals in general to make sure that you're getting the care that you need and to be a functioning member of your care team, if you would. So make the investment. Go to therapy. If you have insurance, I know the copay for me was like $30, and I paid it every time I went to therapy, maybe twice a month. $60, $80, depending on what your copay is nothing compared to the abundance of joy and clarity that you'll have actually going to therapy. And I'm not going to be shady here, but a lot of you, I'm speaking to myself here, a lot of you would rather spend $200 on Uber Eats for the month than just $60 for 2 therapy sessions for the month. So at the end of the day, you have to pick what your priority is And that has to be your mental health because your mind rules all. So I think I'm on maybe point 4. And this kind of goes into the whole therapy thing. You have to learn to sit with your emotions on your own. I'm not saying that you always have to be by yourself, because if you have family members, friends, or a partner that you really trust and that you love, and when I say trust, I mean trust them with your heart, because you can trust someone with your life, but not trust them with your heart. And I think that's something a lot of people don't really consider. But when you learn to sit with your emotions by yourself, it's such an empowering feeling. And that's why I'm able to experience a lot of different things these days without having like emotional breakdowns or big emotional episodes, because I learned to be comfortable with my feelings. See, a lot of us as children, we didn't have the space or the opportunity to explore our feelings or express them. Unfortunately, when we were growing up, we saw conflict come from expressing emotions. We saw violence come from expressing emotions. And to a child, watching and hearing yelling and insulting and threats and even violence is a very scary thing. And I know for me, subconsciously seeing a lot of that in the community that I grew up in, or even in some of the spaces that I was in as a child, I subconsciously believe that if I express my emotions, if I say how I feel, it's going to be blown out of proportion. There is going to be a lot of reactionism. There's going to be melodrama and shouting and yelling, and that's scary. And I don't want to do that. So for a very long time, I held my emotions in like, if you want to call it like a Mento in a bottle of Coke, and you would shake me up and then take the lid off and I would just explode, whether it's crying, whether it's breakdowns, whether it's anger and screaming and just being furious. Because children, they experience emotions just like we do. But when they don't have a good example or role model of safe and healthy emotional expression, they tend to not know what to do with their emotions. So some children who then become adults, they retreat inwards and they shut down and they're quiet. And some, they're very explosive with their emotions. They want to fight. They want to trash the place. They want to scream. All of these things follow us into adulthood, because remember now, we are our inner child. So if you didn't have a safe and healthy way to express your emotions as a child, why do you think that you would have that in adulthood? You can't expect yourself to know things that you weren't taught. But now that you're an adult and you have the wherewithal, you can reflect and say, yeah, I don't like the fact that when I don't get a text back, I'm anxious, or that when I don't get my way, I storm off and I curse people out or whatever have you. You have to reflect, and you have to take the opportunity to learn yourself and to self-soothe when you are feeling these emotions. See, that's what a lot of us were missing as children. A lot of children in general, even today, were missing. And that's the knowledge of how to self-soothe. Because let's go further back in age. When children are like infants, newborns and toddlers or whatever, they're experiencing emotions as well. Emotions are a natural human phenomena. They're here when we're born. They're going to be here until we die. But when a young child is feeling these big emotions, they oftentimes look to their caregivers for emotional regulation and self-soothing, or the ability to soothe their emotions rather. When that caregiver is emotionally immature, when that caregiver is toxic, when that caregiver simply is not there, they don't have anyone to show them how to soothe themselves or to soothe them. And if you haven't already, please, please, please go check out one of my previous episodes on healing your anxious attachment. I go so deep into that. And I think that it expounds a lot more than I can do in this episode. But kind of reeling it back in, When you learn how to soothe yourself emotionally, you will find that you don't have those large emotional outbursts. You'll find that you don't have to smoke so much or drink so much or sleep together with people so much, because now you can actually regulate your emotions. And so definitely go check out that episode where I give you some tools on healing, or at least acknowledging and managing anxious attachment and emotional regulation. And I believe two more things here. Explore mental health resources. And I will say activities as well, but it just depends on what's your steez, what you like. You can find several mental health. The possibilities are endless on the mental health material and childhood trauma healing materials that you could find on Pinterest. You'll also find a lot of information about narcissistic abuse as well. Again, the possibilities are limitless, and that is why I will never delete Pinterest. But find what works for you. Find at least one thing that resonates for you, and you work on that. You try it out. You can look up different mental health or childhood trauma affirmations, childhood trauma worksheets. It just depends on what it is that you need. But I think a culmination of more than one activity or more than one resource is definitely a winner. So, for example, you go to therapy, then you come home, and then you take some me time and reflect. You do a little bit of journaling with some of those journal prompts that I had mentioned, and then do a guided activity. Maybe it's a coloring page. Maybe it's a questionnaire. Maybe it's a creative activity such as arts and craft. Again, you are healing your inner child. You are now in the place of reparenting your inner child. So, if I could put it very simply, be the parent that you didn't have. Be the parent that you needed when you were a child to yourself. So if your inner child liked to paint, but your parents were very strict and didn't believe in creative expression, go to Michael's, go to Hobby Lobby, grab yourself whatever artistry or crafts that you like to do as a kid. Grab that, take it home or to the park or to a friend's house, and you do that thing and you start engaging yourself again, your inner child again. Me as a child, I literally loved swimming so much. I took swimming classes at the prep school that I went to overseas. I loved aquatic sports, literally anything that had to do with the water. And now as an adult, I find myself yearning to do that again. Of course, I have definitely gone swimming and gone into the water, if you would, in my adulthood, but it's just not something that I do often these days. And so to honor my inner child, which is just myself, I'm going to go swimming more often. So just think about some of the things that you liked doing as an inner child and try doing them. You might find that you get connected with yourself again and find joy in life again. So definitely explore the different resources that are out there and see what works for you. I think maybe 2 or so more points. Start facing your fears. Start facing your fears because you are safe as an adult. And I think that this goes back into one of the previous points. No one is going to beat you. No one is going to starve you. No one is going to hurt you because you're an adult and you can protect yourself now. See, when you were a kid, you might have felt unsafe and unprotected and very vulnerable in a very unsafe situation or unsafe place. And I see why you might feel or think the things that you do. But you're an adult now and they cannot hurt you. Nobody is going to beat you. If they put their hands on you as an adult, that is assault, and you are within your rights to call the police, have them arrested, and press charges. No one is going to beat you. See, as children, a lot of us, then and even today, the impact of having family members or parents or caregivers tell you that you are not allowed to feel your feelings was very detrimental. Because a lot of the time, our emotional needs and our mental health needs in general were met with criticism. They were met with deflection and denial and intimidation and even punishment. So I get that you might be afraid to express yourself and speak up for yourself these days. However, nobody's going to hurt you. I promise. You are safe, and it is okay to express your feelings. And of course, in a respectful and safe way. But sometimes you don't need to be afraid to let a bitch know what it is and know what it ain't. Okay? So give respect where respect is given to you. And if disrespect is at the table, do not eat at it. Simple. Breathe. You will get through this. Face your fears, feel your feelings, and speak up for yourself because you deserve it. And last but not least, I always got to mix this in there. I implore people to pray because prayer works and God is actually invested in your life and He wants you to be better and He wants you to heal from those things that broke you. And I get it. I can already hear it now. Well, if God wants me to heal and He cares so much, why did He let it happen in the first place? I can't answer for God, but if I were to have the opportunity to go back in time and change any of the abuse or childhood traumas that I experienced, I wouldn't do it. Because those experiences, whether we believe it or feel it, they are a part of our timeline and of our story that created the woman that we are today. You are who you are today, and you might not be the woman that you want to be, and that's fine. But the fact that you're even interested or considering healing your childhood trauma says that your inner child is a lot greater than you give her credit for. Your inner child is a lot more stronger and resilient because your inner child is you. And if you look at all the things that you have done or created or achieved in life up to this point, that was your inner child. That's my inner child is the one who's making this podcast right now because that's me. And so you need to start praying and asking God to help you along the journey. Ask Him to be your peace in the midst of those storms. Pray and ask for guidance and clarity, and ask Him to surround you with people that you can lean on and that you can trust, and remove the people that have no intentions of loving you correctly and that have no good intentions for you. And I just want to say, in spite of all the bad things that happened, God was there too. You might not have noticed Him, but He was there too, shielding you from something so much worse that could have happened. He was there to carry you and to keep you, encourage you, and be your peace in the midst of the storm. A lot of things that we went through in our childhoods, whatever it was, they were not sent to break you. I'll say some things were meant to break you, but because you have God on your side, they ended up making you. And the Bible says that what the enemy made for evil, the Lord used for good. So even though you were attacked in any kind of way as a child, whether it's spiritually, whether it's socially, whether it's sexually, whatever that was going on in your childhood and even in your life now that you thought was there for bad, because there's so much spiritual stuff that goes into this. But those things that were sent to break you, they ended up making you. And so give yourself some credit and thank God that you are who you are today. And I want you to know that you don't have to be anybody else but yourself. So pray to our Father and let Him know that you love Him and that you are open to the journey and you're open to the commitment of your healing. So with that being said, I just wanted to reiterate that there is no way that I could cover every single aspect of childhood trauma healing and the journey itself on this episode. But today I wanted to share with you guys just my thoughts and kind of open up the door to childhood trauma so we can start to clean out the closet. And before I let you lovely ladies go, I'm going to give you one question that you can ask yourself today. Well, maybe two or three. So number one, can you describe a moment in your childhood that left a lasting emotional scar? Number two, was there a time when you felt invisible or unheard as a child? And three, what were the hardest truths that you had to accept about your family or your upbringing? And perhaps in the next episode, I will continue adding more affirmations at the end so that you can have something to take away and actually engage with outside of just listening. So, with that being said, I hope you enjoyed today's episode and that you take the first step to truly becoming your best self. Heal your inner childhood traumas. I mean, life is so amazing when you actually do that. And to your inner child, I'm so sorry that those things happened to you. I'm sorry that nobody was there to protect you. And I am so sorry that you didn't feel safe and that you didn't feel seen and that you didn't feel loved or that you weren't enough. You didn't deserve that. But I'm here for you and I love you and I'm not going anywhere. You can trust me and I'm going to make sure that you're safe. I got you and I always will. Hence the name of the podcast. But remember to be gentle with yourself, to allow yourself to be loved by others and loved by yourself. Forgive yourself and have grace, because grace is going to be one of the best things you can give yourself and to others in this journey. There's support whenever you need it. So be sure to check out the recent episodes that are posted and follow the podcast on Spotify and here on Apple. Just know that I love you. I look forward to seeing you next time. And remember, girl, I got you.